Welcome to the Energy Fix podcast. Anu, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Tansy. It's a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Anu, we had a beautiful conversation prior to hitting record today, and I got to know just a little bit more about you, and I'm excited for the listeners to get to know more about you as well now that we are recording.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about you for a moment. Is there a word or a phrase that you're really embodying in this season of your life?
Yeah, season is so right. Depends on the season or where you are in your life, right? For me right now, it's I say to myself, this is a mantra that I repeat to myself. I flourish from within. And for me, that means flourishing in body, mind, soul. And a big part of it is making sure that uh, all the different partnerships we have uh, who really make the flourishing happen are flourishing as well. And for me, that means our microbial partners. It may sound a little far-fetched, but I'm hoping by the end of the hour that most listeners will agree that they are symbiotic partners for us, and they are our forever guests. And when we take care of them, we flourish from within us. And this is not something that I came about today. It's something that I've always thought, but more than ever, I feel it so strongly now. And it's such a big passion of mine that everybody understands the value of forging that relationship with our microbial partners.
Mm. And so, flourishing within with our microbiome, we're going to be talking all about that in this conversation today. I guess one of my biggest questions for you, though, is let's be real. We live in a toxic world. There is toxins everywhere around us. And so I would love to know and I know we're going to get into a lot with
Right.
this,
Yeah.
but for you personally, what do you do to continue to flourish in your microbiome and
Yeah.
and help to keep yourself balanced and what's important for you?
Yeah. And I think that's a very bio-individual response. When we talk about toxins, for example, I'm thinking toxins like chemicals and things like that, but also the toxic world. Words can be toxic, relationships can be toxic. So if you really want to thrive and flourish, you have to safeguard every aspect of that of your being. And for me, that means that I examine what could be potentially toxic for me. What are some toxic things that it's impossible to live in this world, Tansy, and say, I'm not going to do anything toxic. They're always there lurking, bombarding you, because how are you going to know every single chemical, every little thing? And even in relationships, we are all bombarded by relationships that can be toxic, but we don't know how to get out of it or how to set boundaries and make it less toxic for us. So that is also a big part of flourishing from within, really knowing yourself and knowing your own true power, and not giving it away to anyone else. And that means all of us, like you and I are coaches. We have clients coming to us, and they have probably gone from practitioner to practitioner looking for answers, but they haven't been able to connect the dots sometimes because we start losing faith in who we are and what we can offer. And my big thing is let's get that power back. Let's
Yeah.
just start with us. And I don't know if I just kind of strayed from your question, but that's where my mind was going. And
No, I love that. And
Mhm.
getting to know about you and your background and the physiological work that you do. I'm loving because I can tell, if you're watching the video of this in the back, you have a beautiful Buddha head. You
Mm.
have amazing selenite that's so great for pulling away negative energy and helping to clear and balance out the energy of a room. You have what looks like an essential oil diffuser. And so, what I love about this is that you are really bringing so many components that are important for keeping that microbiome healthy and
Yeah.
strong. And you are bringing them into your world and into your life, and potentially even into the work that you're doing with clientele. And that I think is so important. And it's an important part of this conversation.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it is an important part of any conversation about healing, nourishing, flourishing, because the one thing I've noticed is that we talk about some of us, like if we are in the spiritual world, for example, we believe in spirituality, or we tend to just do things outside of our body, and I've seen this with a lot of my clients who are very, very spiritual, are empaths, they care about others. Um, but I think to truly flourish, you need to care for this vehicle, this body, when this is out of sync. And when I say body, I mean body, brain, body, mind, connection. When this is out of sync, it doesn't matter what your goals are, what your purpose in life is. You're not able to completely embody that and go after it because you're not feeling absolutely the best version of yourself in this body. And there's no, I think uh, we really can't, we can't escape that. We just have to start here, flourish from within. And when you're feeling so good in your body, then you can give the world, then you can give someone else a piece of you, which is not possible when you're not feeling well. And that's the reason I live this mantra of flourishing from within.
Mm, I love that.
Mm.
Well, Anu, let's just dive right in. I really want to start this conversation off with a truth bomb. You have a book that's coming out. By the time this recording comes out, it'll probably already be out. But you have a book called coming out that's called Why Your Gut Could Be Sabotaging Your Metabolism. And that's not something that most people hear at the doctor's office. That is definitely not a large part of the conversation. So I would love to hear about you and what happened. What was your personal aha moment that connected the gut with stubborn weight and stalled healing, and how you transformed your own personal experience to bring you to this passion that you're stepping into now?
Thank you. And that's such a great question. And I can answer it like it happened yesterday, but because it was many moons ago, but I still remember the pain, the anxiety, the hopelessness that I felt um, during that period of my life. Like most of us practitioners, it's our own personal journeys that kind of propel us into this kind of work. It's not like I just woke up one day and said, I'm going to be a coach. It didn't happen like that, of course. And so I think for me, it was my own gut health. I I grew up in a South Indian family, back home in India, and ate really home cooked meals, all of that, grandma nourishing me, grandfather nourishing me from a mental aspect, just feeding me, just incredible, information, because words and thoughts, those are also food, in my mind, and so I was kind of, embracing all of that. And then when I moved to the States many, 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 many years ago, I sort of embraced the American dream, and part of that American dream is to live a life of convenience. Because for us as Americans, we value work ethic and hard work, all of that. And so it comes at a cost. And we do that by adopting convenient methods. And I was no different. I started eating a little, poorly, and none of this was very apparent to me. I just kind of fell into it. And then when the gut stuff started happening, I was like, what's going on with my body? I've never had these problems. And my hair started falling, and I didn't have answers then. So, of course, I did what everybody does: go to the doctor, go to every possible practitioner, try to get answers. And I was given, just a variety of answers. It's too much protein or too little protein, or I think your labs are great. There's nothing wrong with you. Or they couldn't name it. They tried, but they couldn't. And really, I don't blame them. It's just the system. There's a huge gap in the system, and we find ourselves as that problem in that gap. And I still remember, and this is something I share on podcasts because it is still resonates. That little shift that happened for me is like it happened yesterday. Right, I was sitting in my car after another one of these dead end appointments. um, the the doctor, that was a young man who didn't understand what I was going through, and he was laughing and he said, I've just come out of residency. Your problems are something all of us face. A little bit of bloating, what's a big deal? In other words, suck it up, right? And I just sat there thinking, is no one going to give me any answers? And I was feeling very hopeless and really crushed. And all these chaotic thoughts and emotion, the one thing that was very clearly a thought that came for me was, listen, if no one is going to give me an answer, if no one's going to name this, I want to do it. I'm going to do it. And I almost think that that was just that moment when I stopped being a patient and became more of a detective. And I put my science background to work. We are talking, Tansy, a time when we talked about iPhone, but it was a time when there's no internet or, chat GPT, for example. So I sat in the library and really researched the heck out of my symptoms. And I thought, what could it be? What could it be? And that's how I discovered the microbiome. I fell in love with it. And I thought, this could be that missing piece that no one's really talking about. And so I became an early adopter of it and started learning more about it and realized that I was doing some severe damage to my body by adopting these convenient strategies towards life. I took a deep look at my own way of um, how I was living my life, and it was a revelation. And then from there, healing slowly started, and I finally healed. And so that gave me incredible hope because for the longest time I didn't have hope. And when I finally felt hopeful, I felt like this is something I need to share with people who don't have hope, because by then I was hearing the same stories from so many people, immigrants or people who had adopted the standard American diet, um, and were eating just things that they were not supposed to be eating, and that changed everything for me.
Mm. Wow.
Hmm.
I think that that story can relate to so many people. And the sad, I shouldn't say sad, the unfortunate thing is that a lot of general practitioners, a lot of doctors don't get the education in nutrition. They don't get the education in how that plays a role in our overall well-being to the level that maybe you have now learned and experienced. A lot of them don't get the education on the connection to the gut microbiome in so many areas of their
And
health.
they don't. And I think doctors
Yeah,
are, I heard, or there's some research showing that they're almost 17 years behind in research.
yeah.
And you can't help it. It is the system they find themselves in. And a GP has maybe about 7 to 8 minutes with each patient. Where is the time to ask you, and how is your microbiome doing?
There
How is your
isn't.
gut?
There,
How is your gut
yeah.
and brain? Yeah, there's just no way. And it's not their fault. It's the system they find themselves in. And I think any good healthcare system should have allopathic, they should have functional, they should have coaches, they should have a team around a patient. Because ultimately, what do we want? We want the patient to heal, we want the patient to feel their best. And there's this continuum, right? As a nutrition therapist, and you probably have heard of John Travis's continuum. And I loved what he said about it in the 70s. It was so incredible that most of us find ourselves in a neutral point in life. And we kind of just, we accept it. It's like, oh, a little bit, we have headaches or we're in pain. We say, okay, maybe this is how it is. And then something really radical, something really terrible happens. Maybe we get a disease, cancer, a stroke or something. And then we look to the healthcare system to fix it. But the doctor's job is to either fix it, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. And if they can, they bring you back to that neutral point. But then it becomes our responsibility to take ourselves from that neutral point to high optimal living. So we can't really outsource that to anyone else. And when we do, we find ourselves blaming systems that are not capable of taking care of us. So instead, we empower ourselves and say, okay, what is optimal health for me? And it could mean different things to you or me or to someone who's listening. And then if we can figure that out, then we can take the next steps towards that growth and strength and flourishing from within, in a more meaningful and pragmatic way. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, let's talk about that just a little bit deeper. Let's talk about our modern lifestyle, kind of connecting your story with what you were experiencing when you went to the doctor's offices. Between the stress, the sleep issues, the processed food trap, what actually is happening in the body when these factors start to damage the gut? And why does it often show up as weight gain or fatigue or brain fog or any of these other symptoms that often come up?
So I think maybe we step back a bit and just maybe even define the microbiome, just so everyone's on the same page on that. Um, we have microbes on us, in us, every part of us. But for the purpose of this conversation, I will focus on the gut microbiome. That is where we have trillions of gut bugs living within us, and we've kind of co-evolved with them. We have a symbiotic partnership. In very simple terms, that means, hey, you're doing something for me, I'm doing something back for you. So we give them a place to stay, which is the colon. We give them fuel, which is all of the fiber from the foods that we eat. We can't digest it. So the undigested fiber goes to them and they say, wow, thank you very much. I have food and I can eat that and I give you something back. So pretty much, I'm of course simplifying this, but this is pretty much what happens. And in this symbiotic partnership, if we choose not to feed them what they want, then things can get a little chaotic. So, the first thing for anyone who's listening, who's new to the microbiome, is to say, hey, I have this relationship with my forever guests. They're not going anywhere. This is part of evolution. They're within you, they stay with you. This is probably the best heirloom you can pass on to the next generation. And so caring for them becomes a collective responsibility because we are fast losing species. If we compare ourselves to, let's say, an ancient Hadza tribe, they have like 1,500 species, and healthy American will have a paltry 350, 400. And Tansy, I've never seen anything more than 150 species. The lowest I've seen is 20. So that's like a ticking time bomb right there. It's connected, like you said, to weight gain, to metabolic potential, to inflammation, to blood sugar balance, to immune health. It's connected to so many things. So, how is it connected? Well, when we eat fiber and we don't digest it, they digest it. They are like, thank you so much. I'm able to digest it and produce some very healthy, powerful metabolites called short chain fatty acids. And short chain fatty acids, especially one called butyrate, do incredible work for us. When we think about energy, what do we think about in our body? We think about the mitochondria. Mitochondria are like little powerhouses, that produce ATP, keeps us prevents that afternoon slump, gets us through a workout, all of that. It's doing a lot of things behind the scenes, right? So they actually, the mitochondria, when you think about it, actually are originated from a bacteria. It's called endosymbiosis, and it started from a bacteria. So they appreciate the signals that they get from these short chain fatty acids. So when the fiber is digested, the short chain fatty acids reach the bloodstream, they reach your mitochondria, and they really get that ATP going. And so you feel more energy, you feel great. Same thing, the short chain fatty acids. I mean, by the end of this 1 hour, if everybody understands that short chain fatty acids is the metabolite that you get from digesting the fiber. So the fuel source is the fiber. And we are in major fiber famine right now. We're not eating enough fiber. So, and we don't eat it for us, we eat it for them. So they take care of us. Metabolically speaking, when you think about maybe like a friend and you just go out to eat, and your friend is completely fine throughout the day and she's really happy, same salad with the lean protein, whole grains, lots of greens, all of that, but you are looking at the pantry in less than half an hour. So is that willpower? Is that what else could be happening? So I just want to propose that it could be your microbial profile that's preventing you from feeling full, from feeling satiated, that you want food right after eating. So that's a signal. So it has nothing to do with willpower. And then we look into inflammatory markers. Inflammation goes up when we don't have these helpers calming those signals, keeping us calm. So they are doing incredible things behind the scenes for us. So the very first step is, how do we feed our forever guests? And I do this personally in my own life because, as you know, as a coach, that we all have goals. We want to really go after our goals, but if we don't have a system in place, the goals just go by the wayside. So for me, it's a part of my ritual at night to say, what am I going to feed my forever guests tomorrow? And I've kind of looped my husband into this conversation. And so we usually say, okay, let's soak some beans, let's soak some lentils, let's prep some veggies for tomorrow. Let's, how many sources, plant sources. And remember, fiber is only coming from the plant kingdom. And when I say this, I'm not saying you should eat only plants. I'm just saying you need to eat enough plant sources for your microbiome. Your choice of protein is yours. You do need protein. You need adequate protein to jumpstart your muscle protein synthesis in the morning, for that nitrogen fix, for so many things. So we can't be just looking at single nutrients. But from a microbial perspective, the fiber is monumental. We do need fiber.
And so when you talk about eating a high plant diet as a great source to help support the gut microbiome, is it just because of the fiber, or is it other nutrients within those foods, within those plants that also help to support? Because one thing that I see a lot are for people to go out and say, "Oh, I'm eating fiber from this fortified cereal, or
Mhm.
I'm eating fiber from this grain." So I'm just curious, is it more than just the fiber, or what's the whole story here?
Fabulous. I think we all tend to focus more on macros and less on micros. So we need to start looking at the micronutrients that we get from plant sources. We are not able to make them. We need to get them from our diet. So when you're having a micronutrient rich diet, let's say it's high in polyphenols, flavonoids, vitamins, minerals, your body gets a jump start. Your bugs are able to really see that as food. um, and I think, I always use this analogy, like your microbiome has evolved with you to recognize a few things as food, but what we're doing with this whole fiber famine is really taking them to, let's say, if you and I went to Home Depot and said, I'm going to eat something here, it's really something, it's relevant, it's just pretty much that, because they don't recognize the ultra processed foods, all the things that we're eating today as food. And protein sort of falls in that category because when we eat protein, what happens? Most of it is digested in the upper parts of digestion, right? But if you're eating a lot of protein and you're not supporting your body with enough fiber or plant sources, some of that protein, and of course, our body makes protein too, and enzymes and all of that, and it goes into the colon, and there are certain bacteria that have evolved to metabolize protein. But when they metabolize a protein, when they break it down, they produce some toxic metabolites like ammonia, like hydrogen sulfide, like picrazole, polyamines, which are not really healthy for us long run. You just don't want to have too many of those metabolites. So that's why it's a good idea to look at your plate as, this is for me. I can't live without my steak, or I can't live without my chicken, or I can't live without my tofu, whatever. And then all of this is for my microbes. So you're looking at a system that's easy to follow rather than saying, I'm going to chase the single nutrient and get some information about it. I've done this long enough to know that no one ever remembers. After about 2 weeks, the tallow is forgotten, the seed oil is forgotten. When you're hungry and you're going somewhere to eat, are you going to sit and say, what is in this? But if you have good rules, like most of the time, 70 to 80% of the time, I'm eating whole, unprocessed foods, and they're coming from both kingdoms, animal and plant. Let me have like a variety and a diversity of sources that give me all of these micronutrients, polyphenols, fiber, prebiotic fibers, functional foods, that really help our bodies. Then you don't have to really. It becomes simpler, I think, to live, and that's the life that I live. That's the life that I tell my clients is the easiest way to live, rather than learning about so many different things that we're not going to remember. Our brain is not, it doesn't adapt because they're not procedural. That's what I mean. It's not like brushing your teeth, right? That's a procedural habit, and you'll do that every single day. But until and unless all of these food habits become procedural, you'll keep changing, and you'll have that fatigue because that same part of your brain that's making like an insane amount of decisions. Oh, my boss is calling me. There's a meeting. I really need to show up for this. That same part of the brain is also thinking about, what should I eat for lunch? What should I eat for dinner? And who wins finally? It's that immediate, oh my gosh, I need to put food on the table. Let me go to work. Let me listen to my boss. That's always going to win. And we are going to take second place. So, what I'm suggesting is, don't give your body that chance to make you less important. Have a system that's going to help you and guide you regardless of a shitty day. Oh, can I say that?
You can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's one of those days. It just slipped out. And then you're more apt to handle the stress that comes your way.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that ultra processed food. I love everything that you just said here, but I do know there's times where people get stuck in that loop and they're like, I don't have time. I don't have the capacity, the brain power to even think about anything outside of just running to the fast food drive-through. Or maybe they haven't took enough time to eat, so now they're just trying to grab whatever it is that they can. Does
Yeah.
ultra processed foods retrain the gut microbiome in any kind of a way?
Yeah.
And if so, how is that? What happens?
Wonderful. Great question. Very few people actually ask me this, and I'm so glad you asked me that. Ultra processed foods, when we say ultra processed, there's just different stages of food being processed. Like you are processing it in your mouth, that gets processed a little bit. That's natural process of a food. But when you think about food that's ultra processed, I think of a food that has chemically changed so much that is impossible to recognize the main source of that food. Let's say Doritos, for example. I mean, what is the main source of nutrition in Doritos? Is it made with corn? But it's unrecognizable, right? The last step of this thing that we put into our mouth is maybe orange in color. It has a lot of emulsifiers. It probably has preservatives because how long can you leave Doritos out there, unopened? It'll stay. It's because of all the preservatives, colors, the colors that are added. Our gut microbiome does not recognize that as food. So more of the, I don't like to call them good or bad bacteria, but basically it becomes more pathogenic because even pathogenic bacteria in small amounts can be good for us. So I don't think we're at a point where we can classify them, you know, as this is exceptionally bad for you. I believe more in just having some balance in the gut, right? So with ultra processed foods, like it can cause that imbalance. It can cause um, more of these bad bacteria, for lack of a better word, grow and cause imbalance in the system. So, because they don't recognize that as food. But for that person who does not have the time, who is saying, oh, I'm just going to grab something at McDonald's, or I think the way to protect yourself is to always have, even if you do buy something at McDonald's or if you buy something at In and Out, there's always some greens that you can add. You can add an apple. Apple is high in pectin. Most of us love apples. It's an easy shoe in. Just you just need to prep a little bit for those really hard moments when you don't have time to cook. I'm going to add an apple. I'm going to take some nuts and seeds with me. I'm going to along with my In and Out burger, I'm going to add some salad greens, some cucumbers, maybe have some pickles. Just be prepared for those difficult moments. And yes, life requires planning. Nothing happens without planning. But it doesn't mean that you have to spend 6 to 7 hours in the kitchen slaving, building all these gourmet meals. No, the gut could care less. It's really wanting diversity. So as long as you're able to change up your fruits, change up your veggies, like all of us love vegetable fruits, great thing. If you're constipated, look for certain fruits that are high in pectin. It's a great prebiotic fiber. That's a great way to start. And even veggies, when people start with me, when I ask them, what kind of vegetables do you eat? And it's usually two or three, they're mono eating potatoes, carrots, corn, that's about it. And sometimes cucumber. And of course, when the whole craze about celery, a lot of them said celery juice, but that's forgotten now. That's what I mean. It's so hard to keep up with these things. Um, but yeah, so if you kind of really you're starting there, it doesn't matter. You'll still be able to get some good sources. Everyone needs to start somewhere. But if you're really cognizant of it and say, I need to feed my gut, I need to feed my forever guests, that becomes a responsibility. Then you're not thinking just about your palate, you're also thinking about them. And you need to think about them in a very selfish way. Because if I take care of them, things are going to be great for me. It doesn't have to be an altruistic thought. I don't spend every night soaking my beans because I'm just such an amazing person. I love my microbes. I just said, holy crap, if I don't do that, I'm gonna pay for it. So I better take care of them. So
Well, when we talk about the gut microbiome, I think it's important to remind the listener that there's different phases. I mean, first, you really need to look at replacing the foods, right? Y- to replace with more prebiotic and probiotic foods, which is what you're talking about here. I guess that's the building up of the good bacteria, but replacing the foods, eliminating the ones that are doing some of the harm. So, before we move on and talk about how to really rebuild and what kind of behaviors to eliminate, I want to first talk about what are some of the biggest offenders that really break down the gut microbiome? This could be food, this could be behaviors, whatever you find as the biggest offenders that cause the biggest slashes in the gut microbiome.
Okay, yeah, another great question. Well, first of all, I'm pretty sure the listeners are thinking, what is a healthy microbiome? We don't really have an answer for that. It's so individual, unique to you, because there's so many species, and a lot of these species could be doing the same function behind the scenes. And just because I have one species that takes care of my weight gain and there's another one in yours does not mean anything. Ultimately, we want species. So the better way to um, perhaps define a healthy microbiome is calling it a resilient microbiome. A resilient microbiome is a microbiome that bounces back after an illness, after you've taken a bout of antibiotics for your UTI or something like that, or an infection, or you go to Mexico and you have some food poisoning, or you come back with traveler's diarrhea, but your gut is so strong, you have so many players there that you rebound. That's a good sign when you rebound from these kind of situations. So for a resilient microbiome, you want species richness and you need species evenness. You don't want one microbe or bacteria to grow so much that there's no room for others to participate in the conversation. So it's almost like if you take a garden analogy, you don't want like 100 tomato plants and one zucchini plant. You want species evenness. And if you have species evenness and species richness, you have a good chance to have a resilient microbiome. So what happens that make it go from a resilient microbiome to an imbalanced microbiome? When you think about toxins, you think about antibiotics. They completely wipe out both the good and bad bacteria. A lot of these ultra processed foods can cause um, leakiness in the gut. I'm sure the listeners have heard of the term leaky gut. It's basically your intestinal barrier not being tight enough, has these junctions open up, and a lot of these bacterial debris can go into the bloodstream, and your immune system is like, whoa, I don't recognize this. What is this? I'm going to fight it. So we have to remember that our microbiome is like the training ground for our immune system. 70% of the immune system is in the gut, and our microbes are the trainers. They say, hey, immune system, this is a friend. Treat her like a friend. This is an enemy or a foe. Treat her like that. Or this is a neutral party. Don't react. When that is not happening, that's when we end up with so many food intolerances. Our immune system is like, oh, really uptight, and it starts reacting to so many things. And that's one of the reasons today that we have so many food sensitivities. Growing up, Tansy, I think you and I, that we didn't see this in schools, but now there's like an EpiPen in every school. There's so many allergies. Our children are struggling. If we can connect that to what we're feeding them, gosh, job done today. I think mothers especially um, really need this information. If they are able to vary from the get-go, from when the children are young, 0 to 3 years is just such a crucial time in a child's life. You feed them the right sources of fiber and micronutrients. Their microbiome is healthy and it pays off dividends throughout their life. And you can't do anything better or greater for your child than giving them that little jump start. And even if your children are older, always reminding them about diversity. Broccoli shouldn't be, you know, like a punishment or, oh, if you eat your broccoli, I will give you a candy. We need to stop with that. We have to just say broccoli, it's its own treat. And if we have that conversation with our children very early on and tell them just the impact it has on their life, kids absorb information like no one else does. They love the idea that they are partnering for their health. And I have young children come into my practice through mothers, and it's incredible the beautiful questions that children ask. And sometimes as adults, we don't think so deeply. They have this incredible curiosity that really makes you question a lot of things that you thought you knew, but you don't really know to the depth that you should know about a subject. And I love that about working with children. So yeah,
I'm over here giggling to myself because I remember when I was in elementary school, even middle school, I mean, there was peanut desserts flying all over the place.
yeah,
People would bring stuff in. That was never a concern. Dairy, not even a concern. Of course, there were those who had some of those allergies, of
yeah,
course. But as for it to be an epidemic where it is something that is just known that you have to ask about, that didn't
yeah,
exist back in the 80s and the
yeah.
early 90s, you know? And so
And
I,
that is multifactorial too. It's monocropping,
sure,
all of that, the soil, but yeah, and
yeah.
also our response to it as well. Yeah,
Yeah, and there's so many factors that play into that for sure. But I guess also as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, you talked about broccoli being at an early age, talked about it being a treat of itself, being something that nourishes the body and that children will absorb that like a sponge. One thing too, and I'm sure you see this a lot, is that there's a lot of parents who just don't know that,
yeah,
or they themselves were brought up believing that it was a punishment food, that it was only if you wanted to be healthy,
yeah,
and I say that with air quotes, if you wanted to be healthy, that was a health food.
yeah,
And so I feel like it really starts with changing the mentality of our parents and of our adults that are influencing our kids because of the trickle down effect.
yeah. Well, it's everyone who's in, parents, teachers, neighborhoods, community is important. We are the five people we surround ourselves with. So you don't have to go and change the world. But if your own community, you say, you know what? I really don't want all this crap coming into my life, into my world, into my home. I choose to respect that when I live like this, my children are going to be healthier. I am going to be healthier. And this is this is my core value right now. This is how I live my life. And then when you stick to that plan, a friend is going to be so impressed with your changes, she's going to follow suit. And mothers are the CEOs of families. When moms change, the whole family changes. This is what I see. I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I see this so much in families. And this does not mean that children should grow up not eating a candy, or no, it's all about the Goldilocks principle, right? Just let's all go overboard. If you kind of really deprive them of everything, that may not be a great thing either. But just having a balance that works for you. And that could be very different from what works for me or for someone else, but you will find your own balance. You will find what works for your family. You have a family meeting and you say, kids, this is what I'm learning about the microbiome. This is what I'm learning about how to take care of ourselves. I care so deeply about your health that this is what I'm proposing. I mean, that's a simple conversation, right? And they may not be on board if all along they've been eating Twinkies or something like that. They need to retrain their palate. But you go about doing your own thing, which is what my clients do. Think, well, I'm welcoming you on this journey. If that is not something you want to do right now, I completely respect that. But this is what I'm making in the house. This is what I'm bringing to the table. This is what we are having at dinner. That's it. They're children. They will follow suit. They're not in charge. You're in charge. And you have that responsibility of raising them to eat that way, and I think it is a responsibility.
And I
But
absolutely, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, but and again, it's moderation, right? I mean, that doesn't mean that you are, I always say this with a lot of trepidation because I don't want people to misconstrue that this is like, oh my gosh, like with an iron. No, of course not. It's about having discussions, conversations that are enlightening to the whole family, that you democratically say this may be the best step. But sometimes democracy does not work in the beginning. If you have always brought in a lot of candies, or what is it? It's a cereal that kids like. It's those little, like, it's like Cheerios, but with all those different colors, or Fruit Loops and
Oh,
things
Fruit
like that.
Loops. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really ask your child to say, oh no, we're not going to eat that. You've been giving this to her every day and you expect her to change. It's not going to happen in a couple of days. It didn't happen for us in a couple of days, right? So we have to be patient. We have to kind of maybe say Monday is the day that we eat only plants or plant sources. Come up with a system that works for your family, and that requires a little bit of planning, and that really comes from the parent, I think.
Mm. Anu, I love that.
Mm.
I love that concept of systems to not only help the kids shift, but help the family shift. I 100% agree with you that mom can be that CEO of the family. I mean, I feel like that is seen over and over and over again. And I love too how you emphasize that this is not just about food, that it's about sleep, it's about stress, it's so much more. And as mom comes in as that CEO, and when she is aware, and let's say dad too, if it is a dad only home, right? If dad comes in or if mom comes in and we have this message of microbiome understanding and that it goes beyond food, now we can create this shift and this
Yeah.
change by creating these systems in a more supportive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, even though diet is probably the biggest needle mover when it comes to health, especially your microbial health, well, I would say lifelong health, there's so many other players. And that's the reason I created Nine Arms, because it's not just one arm that does all the heavy lifting, it's all of it, right? Hydration is important. Hydrating your body is important. Sleep is monumental. Thank God, finally, sleep is getting the due that it deserves. If even one night of bad sleep can have you searching for 500 more calories the next day. And those calories are not coming from broccoli. I promise you that, because I've gone through it myself. When I was writing the book, I mean, there were days when I pulled all nighters in the morning. My brain was looking for the crappiest, most processed food I could find in my home. I usually don't have any of that. So if that's how your brain is, that's that dopamine response, that downregulation that happens. So protecting your home from these assaults is very important. You talked earlier about toxins. Think of them as toxins. Everything is like an acute toxin. We choose what toxins we want to partake in, and we do that knowing that they're toxins. Alcohol is a toxin, it's an acute toxin, it can totally mess up your liver and everything. Like I color my hair. Like 5 days ago, my hair was completely gray, and now it's sort of darkish something. That's a choice I made. And I'm making that knowing that this is a toxin. I kind of picked the least offender, looking for all the fewest chemicals and all that. But who are we kidding? It's still a toxin. Then I decide, okay, if I'm going to do this, and this is so darn important to me, so I look good on a podcast or whatever, then I'm just going to do less damage to the rest of me. That means maybe not painting my nails, or doing things like that, or maybe not drinking alcohol, or maybe not partaking in junk food, maybe exercising more, making sure my sleep is good. One day of poor sleep can decrease your microbial diversity because we have a circadian rhythm and we respect our circadian rhythm and we go to bed on time and they have a circadian rhythm very similar to ours. So going to bed on time, having a routine like in Ayurveda, which is Eastern medicine, routines are important. Seasonal eating is important. And I think the microbiome responds to all of those things.
Yeah, and so that those are perfect examples of that gut stress weight connection, the metabolism connection, and how that all plays together. What are some real world ways that you have found really help to start to calm the nervous system to help support the gut in a I guess I should say in a way that you see most necessary, either
Mhm.
maybe according to yourself or to clients that come through your door?
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that my clients always say is, what would you like as a goal? They say, well, I want to be more like you. And I don't think I think what they mean is they want to be calm, they want to be centered, they want to be present. And this did not happen overnight. I mean, it takes time to recognize your own weaknesses, examining them and saying, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do I get this better so my body's aligned? That takes a little bit of deep thinking and introspection, right? But when a client comes to me, even before they talk about gut issues or their problems, I see it in how they show up. They're jittery, they're anxious, they're all over the place, they're not able to sit still. That gives me an immediate clue there's a gut brain imbalance going on. You should be able to sit, have a conversation. You should be able to, but that's not possible because the gut brain is completely, there's an imbalance. So, what's happening there? So, for example, our gut is called the second brain. It's making a lot of neurotransmitters, like serotonin, like GABA, all of these wonderful things that are also happening in the brain. The gut, almost 90% of serotonin is made in the gut. I say this all the time and I'm still amazed. Wow, and some people call it the happy hormone, but I think of it as more as a centered hormone. It really keeps you focused, and GABA is your more of a chilled out, calming hormones. So all of these are made, and thanks to the 10th cranial nerve, your vagus nerve, these messages from the gut are taken to your brain. More messages from the gut is transported to the brain than the other way around. So when that bidirectional pathway through the vagus nerve is compromised, maybe your vagal tone is not strong enough, then just that can have some of these messages to be scrambled, have some garble instead of real messages. And that can lead to anxiety, mood up and down, all of those things, right? So, a quick fix for someone who's listening is start taking care of your vagal tone. It's an easy thing to do. You wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth, right? That's something we've all been taught is very important. Brush your teeth and gargle right after you brush your teeth. Gargle, And when I say gargle, it's not a no. Gargle so your neighbors can hear you. Really, the vibrations, everything gets your vagal tone going. Really helps you with that. And then doing some breath is available to us all the time. A breath that I love and I teach my clients is the bee breath. Basically, you take a breath, inhale, and you exhale, you hum like a bee, and do that about 8 to 9 times. That can become you're brushing your teeth, then you anchor another habit to it, and that becomes your morning system. You've taken care of your vagal tone. You sing. If you like to sing, sing on your way to work. I sing all the time. No one else wants to hear it, but I sing because it really helps my my vagal tone, my throat chakra, all of that. So find things that you can really connect with already present habits, then you have a better chance of following through on it. So that's the vagus nerve. And then start feeding your your body foods that really improve that gut brain axis, like a lot of polyphenolic foods, blueberries, flax, walnuts, easy things that most of us love, right? It's not a hard pill to swallow. So that really helps um, a lot, even with stress and things like that. So, and when you connect that to, let's say, weight gain, a lot of women struggle with weight gain. A lot of them are on GLP-1. Think that your body fiber is actually a natural GLP-1 producing source for you. It keeps you satiated, keeps you full. So if you eat more fibrous foods, you're going to be satiated longer, and your brain is going to look less and less for that insatiable hunger foods. That's what's happening after a heavy meal. If you're still looking for food, that is exactly what's happening. So if we can cut that down, that's right there, so many calories that you're not even paying attention to.
Hmm. And so there's so many ways, just like you talked, there's so many ways to support the gut that are even outside of nutrition.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like there's one more component to that that I want you just to maybe talk a little bit about, and that because this is a hot topic, this is fermented foods and probiotics, right? And so
Oh,
I would love to hear maybe what you think about some of the biggest myths around probiotics or fermented foods,
yeah,
and maybe clear up a little bit of the confusion
yeah.
around them, because it can be really misleading when people think, oh, I can just eat a little bit of sauerkraut, or maybe I can just have some yogurt and I'll be fine. That might not necessarily be the case. So I would love to hear your input on that.
Yeah. Well, probiotics, first of all, the definition of a probiotic is something that confers some kind of benefit to you, the host. So that's just like the basic definition of a probiotic. So probiotics could be supplements, they could be food, it could be in your yogurt. But how do you find a probiotic that works for you? Well, let's say you're looking for yogurt and you say, "Oh, I had yogurt, I'm feeling really healthy." First thing you do is look at the label. And you look at the label and say, "What does this yogurt contain?" I mean, of course, there are other damaging things like sugar and artificial sweetness and what do they call it? Natural flavors. I don't even know what that means. So if you go beyond that, there'll be a little thing that says contains um, cultures. If it says contains cultures, but doesn't tell you what strain or what does that culture mean, I would say put that yogurt back on the shelf. I mean, that is if you're looking at it from a health perspective. If you're looking at it like, oh, I love this yogurt, it tastes so good, that's a completely different story. But if you're looking at it as like, I'm going to buy this because I want my gut to heal, then you're wasting your $7 or $10 on a product that's not going to help you. Because if they haven't even taken the time to say, this is the strain that will help you with it, why bother buying a product, right? So look for strains that have been actually studied, Lactobacillus reuteri, BB lactis 12, some good um, strains that have been well studied. That would be my recommendation when you're looking at food. Same thing goes with um, probiotics as supplements. Some of these supplements can be these strains of bacteria can be transient in nature. They may not really take to your the inside of your gut. So as long as you're taking it, you may get some benefit. When you stop taking it, it may stop helping you. So you have to find out, what do I need? What am I struggling with? Do I have IBS? Do I have SIBO? Do I have fatigue? Do I have what is my big what is my weakest link? Why do I need this probiotic? I see so many people taking so many supplements. And when you really ask them, why are you taking the supplement? They have no idea. Oh, I heard somewhere that it's good for you, but that doesn't help. But if you stop for a second and ask yourself, why am I taking it? Can I track this for a week and see if this really helps me? Oh my gosh, we could stop so much of that garbage that goes into our. And I'm not saying all supplements, I take supplements too, but it's very with a lot of intention. There are certain supplements that I will take because I know that I'm not getting enough of it in my diet. Or maybe I have a genetic propensity to a certain disease, and I want to make sure that I don't have that weakness. So that becomes a very individual response, I think, for supplements and probiotics. Prebiotics, on the other hand, are things that feed your probiotics or your bacteria. So that comes from that system that I talk about. So in fact, in my book, if I can mention my book, that's what it's all about. Is the first section of the book is all about microbiome in very simple language. Section 2 is a framework that I offer, which is not a diet for you, but for your microbes. You eat your protein, your fats that you like, but choose all of these different fibers so your body is thankful. And so that's the system I speak about. And it's really 3 steps. First, you start with foundational layers. You cannot just go jump into phase 3. You need to start with phase 1. And phase 1 is, let's increase diversity in our foundational layers. That means, let's say, Tansy, you're eating amazing organic veggies from Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. You want to change things up a bit, go the next week to a Chinese market or an Indian market. Get some diversity in that way. So you have different plant sources feeding your gut. That is all that your microbes are looking for. Variety. They don't really look for quantity. It's just the quality of fibers. So you start with with foundational layers. You could stay there for as long as you want, 2, 3 months. Then add some enhancers in it. Enhancers are your spices and good fats and fermented foods. I would say anyone who has any kind of gut issue like SIBO or IBS, it may not be the perfect mix to add fermented foods from the get-go, because your gut is already fermenting and at a different spot. So you want to make sure that you're able to handle the fermented foods. And then once you add that, you start saying, gosh, I want to really increase my microbial diversity. Let me add some functional foods. And functional foods are things that have a specific goal, like beta glucans that's coming from your mushrooms or your oats or your barley. And then polyphenols that's coming from your purple vegetables, things like that, dark green tea, dark chocolate, all of that. So you start adding those with intention. So growing your microbes, taking care of your microbiome is a process, but it needs to fit with your lifestyle. And so if you have a system that can adapt and grow with you, I think there's a better chance of you sticking to it. And that was the main reason I wrote the book, because I see so many clients have all these wonderful, great plans and ideas of adding more fiber, adding more, but you can't stick to it. It's really hard because habits are habits. We have mono eaten for so long. To suddenly tell yourself that I'm going to now add 10, or what is it, 30 plants per week. How is that going to happen? If someone has figured this out, please tell me. It may happen for a week or 2 weeks. You could do the whole 30 or whatever, but then will it last? Is it sustainable? Will you still be doing this next year when I have a conversation with you? That's the bigger question. And you need to figure out for yourself, what does sustainability look like for you? Is it 70%, 80%? For me, it's like maybe 80 to 90%, depending on the month. Birthday months, it's probably 80%. I go out, eat, party, have fun, and come back to my life, after that, whatever that is, And so everybody needs to figure out their own sustainable percentage. So they have a clear idea. This is it for me. So I'm going to stick to this.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And
that was a lot.
no, I love that. I'm glad you brought up your book because that was going to be my next question for you. First of all, for the listener, the official name of the book is Flourish from Within, Feed Your Gut for Lifelong Health. And I will have the links down in the show notes for you to grab that. I love that you broke down the system because I really wanted to know why yours was a little bit different in comparison to what maybe somebody may read in other gut health or microbiome books. I would love also to know as we're wrapping this up is how does your book specifically help those who are looking to maybe lose weight or that are struggling with the weight gain, that are struggling with the metabolism that just won't seem to budge, especially as we start getting older and we're getting into some of those perimenopause, menopausal ages
Yeah,
that can be a little bit persnickety when it comes to managing the metabolism.
yeah. Yeah, just even connecting your metabolic health with your microbial health is the first step. In my practice, through working with many clients, I have come up with a system I call MBHR. M standing for microbiome, B is for brain, your nervous system, H is for hormones. That's you know estrogen, testosterone, your insulin, cortisol. All of them play a big role. And finally, R is reframing your mindset. Because without reframing that mindset, even if you grow from an education standpoint, you understand all of the things that you're supposed to do, that brain and creating that different shift in your brain, that's where most of the work is. I've seen that. That's the reason most people are not able to stick to their goals. And then they resort to medications or whatever because they feel like such a failure. It doesn't have to be. It needs to be to understand that habits systems are so important for habits. And I think James Clear said that in his book, and I 100% see that. When you have a system, you're able to follow through and you're able to figure out how to do it. So with metabolic health, with gut health, everything starts with the gut. That's my premise. So from day one, if a client comes to me and is struggling with weight gain, the first thing I tell them is you've been on restrictive diets for so long, you've starved your bacteria. And it's no fault of theirs. They've been told calories in, calories out, or whatever. So they are afraid to eat. So they've kind of really cut out so many food groups and they're mono eating. The first thing is to get them to eat again and eat in a way that's volumetric. So they get enough nourishment. Their micronutrients are alive and kicking. They have more energy. Your podcast is aptly called Energy Fix because it is. I mean, once they start eating this way, they feel nourished, they feel more energy, they don't experience that afternoon slump. And then we go into, okay, now we fix the system. We have a pretty good idea what's happening at a brain level, hormone level, at a microbial level. Now we'll go into phase two and really look at how are you eating? How much are you eating? What are you eating? And that's all over the place kind of question. Some people say, oh, I'm very intuitive in my eating, but that intuition hasn't really helped you, has it? Because intuition doesn't mean that it's right. You could be hearing the wrong messages. So really understanding what intuition means for you is important. And I'm a big believer of intuitive living, but you've got to first know, is it saying the right thing to your intuition? We figure that out. And then finally, the last phase is maintenance. So, and a client could lose anywhere from 20 to 25, 30 pounds in the 3 months. And then they have a system and they keep using the same system to get to their ideal weight. And for me, it's not important that they get to their ideal weight. You could starve and get to your ideal weight. You can use Weight Watchers and get to your ideal weight. You could do so many different things. I have nothing amazing to offer that's like, wow, this is my magic bullet. No, all I'm offering is a system that you have for life. So if you fix your health and you fix all of these parameters, then you're not looking for the next diet. You're not looking for the next shiny object to fix what is really happening inside of you. That is where the flourishing really begins.
Thank you.
Mm.
This has been so much wisdom. This has been fabulous because it does. It all starts at the gut level. Where can people find you, Anu? Where can they get your book? And remember, I will have all of the links down in the show notes for easy reference.
My book is sold where all books are sold. Amazon. It's just dropping on the 29th. Um, I I will also have it on my website, I think, and you can follow me on Instagram at Nine Arms of Wellness. My website is called ninearmsofwellness.com. That is just my philosophy and my business.
Mm. Do you have any last words that you would like to lay on the hearts of the listeners for today?
Well, I would say to listeners, wherever you are in the journey, really the first step matters. Take that first step. Believe in yourself, have faith and hope. You will heal. Optimal health is our birthright. Don't outsource that to anyone else.
Thank you so
Mm,
much for being here. Thank you so
thank
much for
you.
the work that you're doing. And thank you for the influence that you're bringing to the listeners of this podcast.
Thank you so much, Tansy. Yeah.